Welcome to another episode of Dark Days Radio. I'm one of your regular hosts, Chris, and I am joined by Crystal. Hello, Crystal.
Hello.
How are things going?
They are going.
Yes,
It
I know that
is.
feeling.
It's fall here, and so the weather is starting to change over, and it went from like 70s here, and now it's down to like 50s during the day, and then we're supposed to be getting snow soon. So
That's
yay!
all in Fahrenheit, and I don't understand Fahrenheit.
Sorry.
Well, it's like minus 32 off it, isn't it? And then divide by something.
Yeah. I Chig is way better at converting Fahrenheit on the fly. Um,
Yeah.
I want to say it's probably about. It started out to be about, I want to say, 20 is Celsius.
Let's see, 70. I'm literally putting it into 70 Fahrenheit in Celsius. Yeah, that's 21 Celsius.
Oh, I was
Um,
right.
and then it is in, which makes sense, on a minus 30 divided by something that's like minus 32 divided by 2 and all that, I think. And then 50 is down to 10. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been like that here. It's like been less than 10 in Sheffield and wet. And yeah, it's been interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's busy. I mean, that's why I think you're seeing more of us with our podcasting. We're running our own little things, kind of, through Dark Days Radio, and then every so often we gather up and do bits, because obviously you've got your freelancing mentorship series, which
Yep.
is got 3 episodes out now.
It has 3 full episodes, and then there's a whole bunch, and I gotta actually get my recordings for Gamehole Con up. But there's a bunch of live recordings from Gen Con and
Ooh.
Gamehole Con up there on the series as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, my end, my brain's been taken up by learning to drive, not passing driving tests, doing more lessons. That takes up so much of your mental capacity of while
Yep.
you're doing your job, and then and then writing for games. I've just finished writing some stuff for Wrath and Glory. There's so much to come out for Wrath and Glory. That's all quite exciting. Yesterday I was streaming with the guys over at the Rookery, so Rookery Publication. So
Yeah.
that's with Graham Davis, who is a notable writer for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Lindsay Law, who has also worked on Warhammer Fantasy and is part of the Rookery, the Rooks that are there. So that was an entire stream about what is AI, what is machine learning, how does that relate to AI art? Is that going to mean we don't have artists anymore? Do we need artists anymore? The answer is yes, we do.
Yes,
And
we
it's
do.
not AI art, because we don't have AI yet in that sense. It's machine learning art. And then we got into like the whole discussion of like, well, how do you represent AIs in your sci-fi horror games and so forth? And so there was conversations and some examples in there, and it was a lot of discussion and covered a lot of topics. So that was a lot of fun. We've also had episodes on what have we done previously. We've had Hunter. I know Mike has interviewed David about that Kickstarter for the divination in RPGs. So that's out already to listen. If you're listening to this will be that episode will have come out last week. So you can go back to listen to that. Also, I know Iron Kingdoms, they've announced the name of the next Kickstarter. So that's Into the Deep Wild, so that's going to cover some other playable heritages, so Gatormen, Croaks, and other weird things that exist in the wilderness of the Iron Kingdom. So that's going to be fun. And then otherwise, hobby-wise, I mean, what have you been up to hobby-wise that isn't going to conventions?
Oh goodness. So a couple of things that I've been into hobby wise is I have been part of a lot of discussions about unionizing.
Okay.
And like the practicalities and stuff like that of like how to do that. I am not an organizer, so the only thing that I can do is talk about like how the teacher union that I'm a part of is working on doing stuff like that. And even then, like in Wisconsin, the teacher union is handicapped by a lab where we can only negotiate for pay, and that is it. We can't do anything else with our contract. Thank you to the Republican Scott Walker for that. So, but like, it's interesting how there are companies out there that are like, absolutely, if our freelancers unionize, we will totally work with them. And then there are others that are like, nope, we will not. And
Wow.
it's interesting to see the split between that. And which companies are saying that publicly and which companies are kind of keeping that on the down low.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's important, because obviously this comes back to the whole thing of, like, I think mostly you've mostly said a fair bit already. We've said in previous episodes, but I'm sure as part of the freelancer series, is that freelance writing, at least in RPGs, doesn't pay big bucks. Like, you're doing it for the love. And I guess unionizing should mean, the ideally will mean being paid at least comparable to other industries, and then also, I guess, also around the whole thing of being paid on time, and for what and having contracts actually recognized properly and respected and adhered to, because obviously we know with personal experience of people not adhering to contracts and paying on time, and it's soul destroying, because it makes you end up hating the hobby. When that's how you got into it. I mean, I guess that's part of the thing, isn't it, as well? I'm not too sure where I can't remember where you're up to in the freelancers, but I think the first thing with the freelance writing is you've got to immediately get out of your head that you're of treating it like a hobby, and it is, treat it as professionally as possible, because otherwise people will exploit you, because you're doing it for the love, you're doing it for the exposure. It's like, no, I'm doing this so I can buy toy soldiers, or at least that's what I was doing.
I mean, it's great to have, a whole bunch of money in my drive-through account for all of the sales that we have, and I can just go and buy my friends RPGs without spending actual money.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see how that works. And obviously, I know in the US it's important in the US. I wonder how that reflects then into how that will reflect into other countries, like in the UK and so forth, where I don't know what we have for that type of thing, like unions and how they're respected, with at least for freelance writing. That's a very interesting question.
That has been not something that has been discussed, which is interesting, because it's something I've thought of, because I like to think in steps, and logistically, like, there definitely has to be a lot more talk about it and talk through it. But there has to be, I feel like it should be more like a guild rather than a union, where like the membership is open, because like technically, if you think about it, I'm management, because I hire people for PIP system. So would I ever be able to be a part of a union? Because technically I'm also a freelancer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like what ifs, and like there's a lot of loops within this whole system and knots that has to be talked out and worked through. And there are people who are better at it than I am. I just have been vocal about it. So I have been getting a lot of questions and discussion points on that. So yeah, like, it's interesting. It's definitely I did not expect to ever go down this pathway. But then again, I also never expected to get into writing either.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Interesting. I'm trying to think what I've done hobby-wise. I've painted terrain, because I've been, like, my desk and everything, what with housework, house renovation stuff being done.
Yeah.
My office space is still a dumping ground for everything else in the house in some respects. So I'm going to try and tidy up my table tomorrow, and therefore finish off painting some stuff to then start on some new things. But I have painted terrain. I have painted that, what was it, the Skullvane, no, what was it, Warscryer Citadel, which is a huge piece of Warhammer terrain. It's like, it's massive. It's like about It's about 12 inches tall and wide, and is a big, like, skull encrusted observatory. So it just looks
Oh, I
cool.
can't wait to see that.
It's painted up. It's on somewhere on the Instagram or something like that.
Oh,
And
I'll have to look.
then
I haven't been paying attention too much to
I've
that. So.
just painted today because I bought secondhand the big modular gaming table that Games Workshop made back in the day called Realm of Battle, and it's
Oh,
one that does it. It's just rolling hills. There's nothing actually too special about it, but it's plastic, and it can make a 4 foot by 6 foot board. Not that I have room in my house for all of that space, but as a 4 foot board square, it's good. And then if I go to a gaming club, once I pass my driving test, I can put it in the back of the car, take everything else, set
yeah.
up, and actually have playable space. So yeah, I've been doing like little bits and bats like that. Right. I can't think of any other interesting gaming news or any products out that I've been working on. Anything out in particular that you've been working on? Oh, there is one thing we put out recently. That was Paradigm Shift that David wrote.
Oh, yeah,
So,
we did Paradigm Shift. I
Paradigm
completely
Shift.
forgot about that.
Yeah, Paradigm Shift is a Chronicles of Darkness scenario. It's ideally an introductory scenario for mortal characters. It is also perhaps an introductory scenario that ties uh, into say Hunter or into Demon the Descent, and is kind of a is kind of techno Cronenberg style horror. Um, and is set in Manchester, which is good, and is all about the God Machine and some let's say sentient algorithm that is infecting things. That's as much as I'm gonna say. So that's on Drive Through RPG right now. I think everyone's had a hand in this, whether it's been from the editing side of it or refining it or doing the layout. So that's all been good fun. What other products are out? Is there anything out from your end? Anything particular?
Heckin' Good Doggos just shipped out, and I wrote one of the scenarios for it. That's going to be coming out on PDF though,
Okay.
which uses the +1 system. They switched it, or not switched it, but they developed it for non aggressive combat because nobody wants to harm animals and pets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they definitely shifted the feel of the +1 system, but it works really really well. Um, and my scenario is you are battling the mystic waters of the hydrant. um, so yeah, I think that's the biggest one. Other than Kids Guide to Monster Hunting, which is out, and I had an actual play with the Rook and the Rasp for Kids Guide to Monster Hunting. So if you are interested in checking that out and understanding what Kids Guide to Monster Hunting is for Pip System, I highly suggest going to watch that because the people that I played with were amazing. And John is absolutely amazing. And he also just launched a Kickstarter for Gutter Punk, which is great. He was playtesting it at Gen Con, so definitely check that out.
Cool. That's very cool. Right. Okay. So with that all out of the way, we will get into our main topic, which is a bit different for Dark Days Radio. So we're going to be looking at the Chimeric Herbarium by Zoetica Ebb. Right, okay, so Zoetica Ebb, if you're unaware of, is a artist. Previously has been a model for brands like Mother of London and PlastikWrap, and also was previously one of the team behind the magazine Coil House, which I've got a few issues of that. So that was kind of like a alternative subculture magazine. And over the last few years, I guess she's the way to describe it, has been building up a portfolio of artwork, which has a very particular style of pen and ink style, which focuses around I guess the way to describe it is strange alien botany. So, in other words, her artwork features structures which would not be out of place of what you would see in any very scientific book about horticulture. So, there are cross sections in her books of these imagined alien plants. There are descriptions in this book of these things, and the shapes, the forms are both evocative and also quite horrific. Because let's be honest, I mean, I know this book is described Chimeric Herbarium, the world of alien botany, but also even in our world, there are some really weird, fucked up plants out there,
Yes.
or there's some really weird, fucked up fungus out there,
Yep.
or bacterium that grow in particular way. So this kind of takes that and presents it as a very large format coffee table art book around the idea that Zoetica Ebb is, places herself as this kind of is written in this idea of that it's an account of the discovery of a capsule that's been returned back to Earth from some strange planet and has within it the descriptions, maybe mad ravings, but descriptions and diagrams of plants and descriptions of how the crew on this ship died as they were consumed and infected and infested by the strange alien life forms on that world. And Zoetica Ebb is one of the astronauts, one of the astronauts who survived there and who had the horror of recording what happened. Going from the website, from Zoetica Ebb's website, Chimeric Herbarium presents Zoetica Ebb's findings in large format plates of detailed, stark black and red diagrams, alongside eerie descriptions of mysterious flora and ways it interacts with humans, presumably other crew members of her ill-fated space mission. This sumptuous foil stamped black tome with a field durable 5-part cover. It is solid. This book is huge. Contains the complete alien botany art archive and a record of these new forms, and that have taken years since their infectious collection was discovered on Earth. There are also, towards the back of this book, while you do have all these art prints, and the paper is thick. I am holding it right now, and it's like it's to pimp another thing which I work on, which is Cyber Magazine. We're talking like it is thick paper. Like this is, if you were to paper cut yourself with this, God help you. It's that thick. There's also towards the back though, there are prints, more glossy kind of magazine style print, which are of works that were drawn from Zoetica's kind of artistic style for these art prints. Again, there's images, dresses that were modelled by Ulorin Vex. That's what I was thinking of. And those dresses were made by Plastik Wrap, of course. And then there's other more colourful prints that are outside of the just black and white and red prints. And really, just as you expect, it's an art book. It's a coffee table book, but the first half, which is all these art prints, I looked at and I got sent I knew I was aware of Zoetica's work, and when I was like thinking, okay, art book, and I was like, I think this falls within our wheelhouse. And when it arrived, I was like, this is these things in here need profiles, need stat lines, need something for some game, because they are fucked up and they are good horror. So I'm going to stop chatting at this point because I think I've given at least an overview, and I want to get your impressions then, Crystal.
So one of the things that I absolutely love is I love to see books done as if they're old journals, specifically botany journals. Like I have the Wicked Plants book, which is all about plants that are poisonous, and then like how to kill and how they kill you. And it is done like it is some sort of early botanist book. They're hand drawn pictures of these plants. They have labeling and they have like descriptions and stuff like that. And it's done so gorgeously. And I love stuff like that. And this is very much done in the same way where they have the pictures of these plants. They're and then in like a drawing style. And then they also have like the bisection of it, and then they have like how it like affected the body. Like the very first one that they have is how it implanted itself in the eye of somebody. Which,
Yes.
and they have like a bisection of the eye. So like if you're not into body horror, definitely there's a trigger warning for this. I find this absolutely fascinating, and I love it. I love that whole style of how to present plants in an interesting way.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like I mean obviously um it taps into something which I guess in some respects in our modern age where we have the ability to scan, whether it's by CT scan, magnetic image resonance imaging, or or taking high resolution photography and so forth. This harkens back to the age where, you know, in medicine in particular. I mean, if you go to Boston and you go to the museum that's attached to the Boston City Hospital, I can't remember what the name is, but it's the one which has the ether dome, right, and has the mummy in a case there as well. Just if you're ever in Boston, go see that. It's great. But also, the museum has a wonderful collection of, again, these gorgeously illustrated um, images of parts of the human body sliced open for everyone to see. And there's just something about someone being able to draw in such detail the structures of organic life forms and get across. I think that's the important aspect, is getting across how it operates through what is a static image, and knowing what the best slices through the thing is, or what the best close-ups are, in order to really impart upon us how this thing works. And so I think the Chimeric Herbarium does that with these imagined life forms.
Yes.
And there are some really horrible ones. So, like, you know, that we begin with, was it a seedling that, and again, the language that Zoetica uses is clearly drawn from her extensive research into plants and
Yep.
biology. Is
And
written exactly in that style. So, you know, do
yes.
not be put off by how wordy it is, because it is meant to feel like that. Like,
Yep.
and so that should
It
just make you reach for a dictionary to
it's
understand what it is.
it's meant to be a botanist recounting
Yeah,
of everything, and so it's going to have a lot of description, specifically scientific description. If you've never picked apart a science journal before, or even like a paragraph of a science journal, it can be extremely overwhelming. Um, my suggestion, if this is something that is overwhelming to you, is to uh, definitely look at the parts that are um, familiar to you and use those to kind of interpret everything else.
yeah. And yeah, so I mean, the descriptions of these. So what have we got? I said we've got something which I think the initial one was. So we're going to give a very brief overview. We've got a seedling which gets into the body, grows, and connects with the eye. And does it replace it, or I can't remember, or it grows around
It
it?
grows around it.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's another. What's the next one? It's just does. Oh yeah, it clamps onto the
Yeah, that
person.
that looks more like a fungus.
Yes. Um. Then we have another one which is like these magnetic seeds, and so they. Let's think. What's it say? Like latch onto a creature and then burrows into it, causing hallucinations and so forth, and gets it to consume to obviously help it grow the seed, and then it has to return back to the ideal conditions where the seed pod, now that it's ready to bloom to fully mature, releases. So that's, and these are all interesting ideas of how, I guess, like how you can create some very horrific concepts in here, because this is about within your games. Like, you could quite easily port these things into like Chronicles of Darkness, because that could
Oh
be,
yeah.
these could be basically, could be, you could use them as cryptids or alien life forms. The God Machine and other things come from other worlds. Or in or any of the Mage games, it could obviously be these
Oh
could be
man.
organisms that are created due to paradox or come
Yup.
from
I
the
was just
abyss.
thinking that.
They're very abyssal kind of entities. Or, I mean, the other place you go is with werewolf, where these, because in werewolf you could get plants which I guess spirits that want to create plants that don't exist in the natural world because they've consumed to become Magath, but very plant driven Magath. So they're like amalgam spirits, and the thing they want to bring into being is these kind of weird plants. That's kind of the initial places with the games that we're most familiar with. But also, I mean, you could, coming from from the worlds of like Warhammer 40,000, you could populate a death world with
Oh gosh, yeah.
horrific plant life, which includes things like this. And one of the things that I found quite interesting is the art style is back when the Tyrannid Codex came out back in, oh god, that's like 1995, 1996, 1995. And the black and white artwork, because you're dealing with these bio weapon organisms, this is reminiscent of that, because again you had the Tyranids, some of their weapons were like glorified firing seeds at people that burrow into them and germinate in their blood, or stuff like that, because obviously the Tyranids, the barrier between plant and creature to the Tyranids is like non-existent. Any other favorite things that you want to pick out in the plants that we have here, Crystal?
I am really liking like the it's on page 22 in the PDF, but it's Desderium papillo uh, papilionum. It looks like this weird. It looks like part of the mask from Sandman in like this gastropod,
Oh,
and then
hold on,
it
let me
opens
bring
up
that.
into like this really gorgeous like bloom that kind of looks like the corpse flower. And
Um,
apparently, like those tentacles latch onto whatever is there, and like it looks like it's consuming its flesh and stuff like that. Like it's wrapped around its rib cage
oh
and
yeah,
everything. Yeah, like that is extremely face hugger to me. Like you could easily throw this into an alien game, and
yeah,
it,
oh yeah.
like if you want to get away from, or you're doing like a cinematic play style for Alien, and you want to get away from like the traditional aliens and do something else, this is absolutely in that wheelhouse.
Yeah, you could get quite a lot of paranoia with just whether someone's been infected by a plant, and whether it's going, or by a fungus, and
Yep.
whether, and who in the party might reach maturity and spread the spores. And that's actually an episode of the X-Files has that exact idea, that there's this ancient fungus that has infected these researchers, and when it bursts forward from their throat, I think it releases the spores. So there's a whole, like, every time this happens, people like lose their shit. And you've got Scully being like, wait, but this is really interesting. It's like, but it's gonna fucking kill you. Um,
Isn't that every episode of X?
Yeah, but I mean, it's a plan. It's just a plan.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
like
it's. I
there.
think the thing I was going to say is I think there's the style of book just makes me think of like how it has almost an OSR kind of Mortborg kind of feel to it,
Oh
where
yeah,
because that
absolutely.
minimalist color palette
Yep.
and I think while the graphic design of those RPG books are very kind of in your face and very roughshod and like just get it on the fucking page, get that ink on the page, get the paint on the page, do it. This is almost like that but flipped because it's the precision of trying to get across what these fucking plants are doing to people.
Yep.
um I mean, I would say the one which also looked particularly like freaky um, is what was it? The Liguam ignotum, which I think it's just because there's the one which involves some bladders filled with fluid. Sorry if that was from what you call him from 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 Futurama. But it's that one image of like the astronaut being surrounded by these is it fibrils that we have in our gut? I think it's fibrils.
Yeah, I think it's fibrils.
And it's just kind of like that's. I think it's interesting where you can get across that feeling of that is sticky and gooey and gross
Oh
in a
yeah.
picture.
Oh yeah, that picture absolutely looks wet. Like
That looks wet, yes. Um, but I mean, the take home with it is like there's no rules content in here whatsoever, but I think there's a lot of interesting ways of inspiring your games where you want to have antagonists that aren't really like they're not
it's not
conscious in the
something you're
same
gonna
way.
fight in a battle.
No, it's you're not going to fight in a battle yet. It's going to be a battle to overcome that, and or at least you can litter some alien world, or I say alien world, but even some fantastical fantasy location.
Yeah.
It's going to cause trouble with that. What other points were there to bring up? Other last thoughts about it?
I like I feel like this plays into this primal horror of like have you ever heard of the statistic where like statistically if insects and stuff like that didn't exist that fungus would actually take over the world.
Yeah, something like that. Like
Yeah,
fungus
like
is
there are things that keep fungus in check because fungus otherwise would absolutely take over the world and they don't need us to exist to continue to thrive. And so this plays upon that primal horror fear feel that you get like when people see certain types of fungus, there are certain people that are like, "Oh my god, don't ever touch that." And then there are others that are like, "Oh, I want to pick the fungus." Without knowing what it is. And then there are others that are like, no, you absolutely should not be touching that because it's going to kill you. So like it can definitely bring out those aspects in a group. Like you have the person that is studying this stuff and can apply that knowledge of fungus and botany and stuff to this stuff and be like, oh, this is bad. This is really bad. And then there are others that are like, I want to touch it because it looks cool.
yeah, yeah, for certain. I think the other thing is, I think it's a really, like I said, I think it's a really interesting book to look at for inspiration if you're like looking to make a new
Mhm.
game in the
It's
sense of
gorgeous.
looking for an art style, because I just think that while Mortborg has been quite the release and obviously has been quite influential of late with games like there's Cyborg, there is Vaskrim, which we're going to talk about in a little bit in a moment. There are games like that. It's kind of that art style still continues through those
Hmm.
games of that very kind of like it feels like it's been slapped together, glued together, spat at, whatever, to get it to work as a book. While I still think that you could take the style of the Chimeric Herbarium and use that for an RPG
Oh yeah.
to reinforce certain themes. I don't know what that. I think it would be very good for some sort of science horror type game.
I would
Um,
I would love to see something like this with like a field journal dissecting with an aliens game, honestly. And not even
yeah,
like the traditional aliens.
no,
Like
yeah.
some of the other stuff that they find and you come in contact with, and like the drawings and everything like that.
So the thing I was going to talk about briefly then, where I think this you could use the Chimeric Herbarium and most probably easily start kind of using the concepts out of it, at least the plants, that is a game I backed called Vasgrim, which is a Mortborg compatible game by Infinite Black. So it is by comparison quite a small book, but it is again, like I said, it takes that Mortborg style, and the main concept is, and I'll read the blurb for this, is the earth that once was has been sliced through, gnawed at, and chewed upon and spat out. All that remains are floating vestibules anchored to the fragment carcass of an exploded planet and the ships. Is there fuel in their cores? Is it even possible to evade and escape the inevitable? I think not. Those that still remain are merely vessels within vessels, waiting to be fed upon. Let us not forget the space stations. Perhaps there is still some form of civilization left in these pockets. When will a dormant awaken to become one of the grim? When will they be called to feast upon their souls? I pray that today is not the day where I'm one, where I am beckoned to become one of them. So it's a sci-fi setting where the galaxy is being slowly taken over by these things called worms, and so they're very eldritch in their nature. They infest people, they infect people, and drive them quite mad. There are, as an OSR game, you can expect it's the normal kind of very random tables. You can play a whole host of different type of characters in it. So the character types, I'm going to just quickly go through. There are the Manchines, which is cyborgs, soul survivors, clearly people that have seen a lot of crap in their time and somehow survived. You've got techno mages, techno mages, but they're called technomaniacs, which you've got twisted biochemists, you've got traitorous mercs, you've got emobot, which is basically you're a robot with emotions, lovely, and then you've got the devout, so you can play a priest in a sense, a harvester, they're good at digging around people's stuff and taking things, and as you expect from it, that's the very OSR in that nature. And then the list of like creatures and things you can come up against is interesting, and they are gross, and some are described with luminous blood. There are space zombies. There are the grim. So the grim, what the grim are in this setting, the grim will inhabit any living vessel they can find. You may find yourself up against someone from your old legion, or mutate, or even like a mutated creature. So the grim, these worms burrow into anyone. They're easily distinguishable once fully overtaken by the grim. Their eyes turn bioluminescent blue, and their veins an electric pink. This color radiates from their eye sockets as it seeps under their skin until the flesh cracks. And so the point of the game is that there's always a danger with a lot of the things you come up against, that you could become one of the grim. And I think it's true grimdark, because one of the tables you have to roll on when you start the game is to find out, you basically are choosing how close you are to the end times. So there's a table that you roll on which are called torments. And so, for example, it's a D66, so there's that many endings or stages towards the end times. For example, you could roll on torments and get the result that says, and from the farthest corners, 3 stars will supernova, and at its center, the worms will scream. And that's it. It just sets the tone. And I think we're at some point we'll do some more chat about Mortboard because we've got some other games that are based on those same systems. So we've got
Yeah.
Vasgrim to talk about a lot more. We've also got Cyborg, which I've got a hard copy of, which looks a lot of fun and is lighter weight when you compare it to Cyberpunk Red or similar systems. What
Yeah.
else have we got from Mortboard? We've got the what's the one I also backed and got the PDF of? I can't think of its
Um,
name.
there was one that was just done, like very shortly ago.
Yeah, let me look. It was the one by. Let me find it on Facebook. I'm gonna go on my Facebook and I'm gonna go to the right.
It's not Whispers of the Dead Saint.
No, the other one is. Let me find it. Why have I forgotten its name? I mean, I've read through it and it's kind of cool because you play undead characters in it. Oh, or you're basically playing revenants, demon dogs, or demon
Oh,
dog. Sorry.
okay.
So that's from Dave Alsop and Jared Earl. So at Slay from Slay Industry. So they're the artist minds behind the Slay Industry game, and they describe it as a punk tale of revenge and redemption. So we've got that to review, and again, the interesting thing about that is you've got the Mortboard kind of graphic art design, but the way monsters and characters and so forth are drawn are very much in that Slay Industries 2000 AD kind of style. And when I saw it, I was like, okay, right, this is a cool book. Yeah, so I think it'd be good to like talk about these kind of lightweight RPGs, that kind of Mortboard style, because I don't think we've really gone into them a lot and kind of just get the feel for why they're interesting and fun to play. Especially because I think obviously the core element of these, like you look at Vasgrim, is you roll on a few tables and you've got a character ready to play, and the
Yep.
system doesn't ask you to invest much more into it, unlike say if you were playing Vampire or Warhammer
Yeah.
Fantasy allows us to randomize characters, but like you can't. That's because it's telling you, do you want to do it, or do you want to go full random, or do you want to take a bit more time, depending upon what you're doing. Well, I mean, talking about like new stuff, like because there's stuff that's turning up in people's post boxes from Kickstarters. Was there anything at Gamehole, anything highlights game wise, new stuff that you spotted and just went, ooh, that's something to look out for?
Oh, I so there was a whole bunch of stuff that was there. Free League was actually there with a booth with all of their stuff. So they actually had Morkborg there, and they had aliens, and they had Vaesen and all of that stuff. There were, hold on a second. There were a couple of things that were there that uh, are coming out with some new. Uh,
Because I know Ed Burrell was there with Skeleton Key Games, and so they
yeah,
were showing off Slime, which is a 5e splat book in quite literal sense. So that Kickstarter's ended, but I thought was quite interesting because it's literally a full monster book
yeah,
and races and spells and subclasses all
yeah,
around the theme of slime. And there were some really nice like add-ons they did for it, which were there was like an accessory deck which just had the spells and everything from the book. They had
yeah,
the sludge farm, which was some adventure tiles, and you just tessellate and make caverns of slime to go through. So that seemed like a neat thing, and Ed and who else was writing on this? I believe Matt and Douglas Seacat. Obviously, all three of those designers all worked for or currently still work for Private Press in some capacity in game
yeah,
design. So this was kind of like them doing a little fun thing
yeah.
as their own spin-off. I'm trying to think what else.
So,
Yeah, come on.
and Anvil 8 was there, Anvil 8
Okay.
games. And actually, two of my friends actually just purchased that company. And so that was their first convention. with their products. And so one of the main game that they have out right now is Ethereum, and they have a couple of expansions for it as well. And then AAW Games, which did the I forget the full title. Hold on a second. It's a drow book that actually treats them respectfully. uh, Trying to find Rise of the Drow was there as well.
Hmm.
So um other games that were there, like the other one, let's see here. Sorry, I'm trying to look up stuff because it's been a while since I've
Mm-hmm.
been there. I want to make sure I'm getting all of the names correctly. I had a very, very good talk with um, Zach, who is the um, lead project manager for Frog God Games. Uh, we were on a couple panels together. Do-do. Um, Come on, where is it? Sorry, you're gonna have to cut some stuff.
I know, it's all
Oh,
right.
Independent Publishers Union. That's what I wanted to. So the Independent Publishers Union is not a union like what we've been talking about, but it is a group of individuals who have been getting together. They do publish OSR stuff, but they have been working really hard to kind of combat some of the more negative aspects of the OSR community.
Mm-hmm.
And they have invited me on to several of their panels to talk about freelancing, and they talk about it from like a publisher standpoint. And we've worked together on a couple of different things. They're individuals that I've really grown to respect and to appreciate, and to see that they really are trying to make the community better, and still do the things that they love to do. And a couple of the guys that would be on there, in there is Skeeter Green, Levi Combs, Jim Wempler. Let's see here. Who else? I'm trying to think of. There's like a whole bunch of them. Ian, blanking on his last name, which is great. uh, but yeah, so if you haven't checked out the Independent Publishers Union, definitely check them out. They've been at a whole bunch of different conventions. They're continuing to travel, but they also have a very active Facebook group, and I believe they're on Twitter. So, but yeah.
Cool. Right. Well, I think we've covered everything we wanted to with this, and just kind of like talk about just generally chinwag about some gaming and plans. So I think in the next few episodes we've got planned, I think I am going to sort out the show notes and get prepared for another Dark Hour episode, which is going to cover Zinch finally,
Oh,
because
nice.
Zinch is great. Zinch is a fun one to just going to be really complicated to talk about the change of ways. But that'll be soon. And then I don't think we've got any other particular. This is the thing, like we're obviously diversifying because let's be honest, like our typical bread and butter games are publishing at a rate of what well at the rate of what Glaciers would be described of in days gone by. Glaciers right now move pretty fast, unfortunately. But with the freelancing series, Crystal, what have we got planned after? I know you've got recordings for the panels and so
Yep.
forth when you've been at conventions. What's the more kind of like scheduled interview mentor mentee episodes you've got planned coming up?
So the next one that I want to do is the writer's process.
Okay.
And I am going to be reaching out to the people that I have in mind for guests, to be on there as well, and hopefully get that recorded. I need to get the live recordings that I have for Gamehole Con cleaned up and up. And yeah, after that, I'm also working on the next PIP system, which I'm going to do. I'm challenging myself as a developer and trying to take away mechanics and still make it feel like the PIP system. So we're going to do like a PIP system similar to like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley, where it's like very low key chill. You know, it's something for you to add into games after you're done adventuring, or to allow your players to do like one-on-one gameplay with themselves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. I have a couple other announcements for some other projects that I'm going to be working on hopefully soon. So I've just been keeping busy.
Yeah, that's the best way though. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Well, at least we've got more content definitely on the way.
Oh yeah.
And then at some point, I'd be good to get back into doing some streamed games. I mean,
Oh,
there are
absolutely.
ideas we have. It's just like I said, sometimes it's just time and energy, because it's like literally everyone on Dark Days Radio is pretty busy these days. Whether it's doing mundane stuff like buying a house, or doing up a house, or learning to drive, or something else like that, or it's just doing lots of writing. That's the thing. But we will keep our eyes out for any other interesting and cool releases
Oh,
coming
absolutely.
up. I know I played the beta for Dark Tide, so that's the Warhammer 40k computer game. That's by Fat Shark Games. So that's it's basically like Vermintide, where it's a cooperative kind of, how do I want to say, cooperative. Is it a dungeon crawl? I guess it is. You know, you're going into the hive and you're killing lots of, you know, Nurgle infested demon. Well, I say demons, but like zombies and so forth. So I think once that is out, I've talked to James about it, and now obviously my gaming PC is back and working fine. It'd be very nice to try and stream some of that, because that'll be hilarious. Be very funny. And yeah, I think that's really it. So if you've been listening, thank you for listening. Obviously, if you want to get in touch with us, email us at darkdaysradio@gmail.com. You can find us on you can find us on Instagram at Dark Days Radio. You can still find us currently at time of recording on Twitter at Dark Days Radio. You can find us on Facebook. You can also use the show links to get to our Discord community to chat about things there with us. I have a profile on Mastodon, but I don't know how we're going to go about whether Dark Days Radio has some formal presence on there yet, or whatever, because I know there is the exodus from Twitter occurring. So we'll look at that. It feels like Google Plus all over again, actually, having to do this type of thing. But, you know, we'll see what's happening. But, you know, the Discord is generally the best place to come to chat to us.
Yep.
And that's about it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yep. Okay, well, thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.
Bye.
This has been an episode of Darker Days Radio. Special thanks to Occam's Laser for the intro, outro, and new bumper music from their hit album, 9 Circles. Check out the rest of their work at occamslaser.bandcamp.com.